The name of the game is feet. If you're not in it for the feet, are you really in it at all?
This movie was full of feet, and the movie that we're going to talk about is...
Operation Dynamite!
Once Upon a Time.
Oh, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There are movies within movies within movies. Do you remember all the Italian spaghetti westerns?
Kind of.
A little bit. There's so much to talk about with Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So let's just get into it. What did you love about this movie?
A lot, actually. I thought this was a great movie. He definitely made this movie for himself.
Yeah.
And that's great because if you love movies, then he also made it for you too, because nobody loves movies more than Quentin Tarantino, I think.
It's really true. It's funny. You know, we're going to get into spoilers for a lot of this. This is just at the beginning, spoiler warning for the whole film. It's been out for a couple weeks now. You should have seen it. You should have seen it 3 times like a good buddy of mine. We've only seen it once.
Right.
And I kind of regret that we saw it with digital projection, because you can see like the film projection 35mm classic style.
Right.
Kind of like when we saw The Hateful Eight, 70mm. That was great.
That was great.
Yeah. But still, even digital, fantastic film to watch.
Right. So a few things on why I think that Quentin Tarantino made this movie for himself is there were several scenes where it was basically a time waster and anybody else would have cut it, but it was there because he wanted it there. He worked really hard to make the background of the scenes 100% accurate to what that time period was in Hollywood at that time.
Yeah, they're not doing anything with CGI in this movie. They actually, during production, made Hollywood look like 1968, 1969 Hollywood. Mm-hmm. It's like, if I'm going to quibble a little bit, like I told you this before, like I think in the actual 60s, probably the streets looked a little fresher, but really how much can you do? They got all the old cars there, they got the old signs there, they have the whole scene on the last night in the third act where it's like all the electronic signs come on, and you hear that, so that's pretty fun.
Yeah. There was also a lot of gratuitous feet scenes.
That's how you know it's Tarantino.
Yeah, so I guess Margot Robbie's got those kinds of digits that he's really into, because hers were shown several times in the movie.
Yeah.
But also we had some of the Manson girls who were running around barefoot. In fact, there was like a close-up of a girl's feet when they were dumpster diving, and they were singing a Marilyn Manson, a Charles Manson song.
Yeah.
Charlie Manson. And actually that scene in particular is up for, there's some debate going on there. Originally, Quentin Tarantino was going to leave it in the movie because he was assured that Charles Manson and his family would not get any benefit from it, and that the proceeds from using that music, even though it's just like a little snippet of them singing, that it would go to the victims, Sharon Tate's family, and it's not. It turns out that his grandson may have gotten the rights to the music after that promise was made to Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, that's wild. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so that family might actually benefit from it.
I guess that's kind of a bummer, so don't go see the movie.
Or just la 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 la.
I take it back. You should still see the movie. It's great. I've never enjoyed movie violence so much as I enjoyed movie violence in this film. I was raised in a stable home where violence was never the answer. And so I was always told, like, don't hit anyone, don't be violent, don't solve your problems with violence. But then you watch something like this, it's like, I guess some problems can be solved with violence.
Maybe.
So again, the big spoiler for this, again, if you haven't seen it, turn off the video or at least mute the video and watch the beautiful art being made. And
this art right here, we have Leonardo DiCaprio as...
Rick Dalton is his character's name, but it's actually, this is Inception. We're going a couple layers deep because this is Leonardo DiCaprio as Rick Dalton, as Dakota is what he thought, but it was like Dakota, right?
Right.
He was like the bad gringo and the TV pilot for the fictional series Lancer.
So, fun fact, one of my friends, who's a famous comedian, had a little story about this whole, when he went to see the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he was invited to a Hollywood party, and it was being thrown by one of the producers of Full House. And when he was there, he was talking to the bartender, and the bartender's like, man, it's crazy that we're in this house, isn't it? And he didn't know anything about any of this, so he was like, yeah, so crazy. He was like, yeah, I mean, it's like Roman Polanski's house.
So this was the murder house?
This was the murder house, and my friend had no idea still. And other people at the party were like, hey, yeah, so that's crazy that all this went down here. And he's like, oh, yeah. So he went outside to the back porch to Google on his phone what happened. And that's when he found out what happened at that house. And he looked out, from the porch and saw like the area where the Mansons the Manson family was sitting and like plotting and waiting to murder all these people.
This was a party for the movie?
No,
This is unrelated. This
unrelated.
is old party.
Old
Okay.
party.
Okay. I still thought, it's like if you don't know a bit about the history of the Manson family and how they sort of tragically intersected with Polanski and Sharon Tate, basically it boils down to this. Polanski was not murdered, but Sharon Tate, his very pregnant wife, was murdered by members of the Manson family in 1969.
And it was just because they bought the wrong house.
Yeah. And this is the spoiler part for this film. This is the fairy tale Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is that they get a happy ending in this movie.
None of that happened in Quentin Tarantino's life.
Right. And
in his idea of how it should have gone down.
in this cartoonishly violent version of the events, Rick Dalton, drunk on margaritas, comes outside and starts yelling at the hippies as they're plotting. And then, they come back later and like, okay, we're going to kill them. And they come in on Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth, who's just smoked an acid cigarette. And so then, it starts to spiral out of control.
He smashes those people up big time. That was one of the most violent scenes I've seen in a movie. Ever.
But if you know, like, the reality, what happened in real life, you're for it. It's like you're cheering for it to happen because you're like, oh, thank goodness, we finally fixed things. It's like the second best thing to actually having a time machine and being able to go back and save Sharon Tate's life.
Yeah. And really, honestly, even though it was the most gory scene I've ever seen in a movie, it was also so long. Like, they were bashing them forever. And then it continued on outside where Rick Dalton, as pictured here, was floating in a pool with a radio and drinking his margarita.
Which is dangerous, right? You shouldn't be in the pool with a radio.
Well, it wasn't plugged in.
Oh, it was okay as it turned out.
But that lady that came flying through the glass door, all like cut up, screaming. She was like flying around. It took forever. And then he finally got out of the pool and
gets his flamethrower from, I forget the full title, it's like the 14 Fist of McCluskey, which was like in the movie, again, like an Inception sort of thing, loosely based on, in the Quentin Tarantino universe, real life events from Inglourious Bastards, because they killed Hitler by setting him on fire in a movie theater.
Right.
And then they kind of made like a Hollywood version of those events within this universe. So people have made this comment before that, like, in the Tarantino shared movie universe, the Tarantino cinematic universe, that people just have like a greater acceptance of ultra violence. Like, everyone's just a lot more for it. And now after watching this, in this context, I'm more for it. Of course, not in real life.
Right.
But in the Tarantino universe, it's all okay. I'm still not the world's biggest footman, though.
No. Well, you're drawing some very lovely feet right here.
Yeah, so this is Sharon Tate in the theater watching herself. What's funny about this scene...
It's one of my pet peeves.
Feet? Dirty feet?
People putting their feet up in the theater. And on the airplane, if you're not in your living room or on a beach or somewhere where it's appropriate, don't do it.
That's true. I do not care for, in real life, when people are at the movie theater and they take off their shoes and then lean back because it's all recliners now.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, ugh, I don't like these feet here. But I mean, I'm not even in the movie. I'm not the world's biggest fan of dirty feet anyway, even if it's Margot Robbie's dirty feet. But what's funny is she's watching the movie of Sharon Tate, and in the movie it's footage of Sharon Tate.
Yeah.
Whereas there are other bits, where they have the actors replacing the real actor in the films.
Right, Leonardo DiCaprio had replaced the real actor in the films that they cut him into. But I believe that it was, one of those things that they worked very closely with Sharon Tate's sister to make sure that this was respectful to her memory and isn't something that they would walk away feeling sick or feeling like if only things had happened differently, So I think that this is one of those things where they included her to show respect.
Yeah, and at this point it's like Tarantino's 10th film, so you gotta, you know what he's capable of. You gotta trust him. Like if Tarantino came to me and look, you wanted to make a film about my YouTube channel, I'd be like, no more questions. You do what you want with it. So, there was a lot of stuff in this movie that, despite, getting people's permission, like Sharon Tate's sister and so on, there were still things in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that upset certain parties. And a big one of those that I keep seeing stories on is the treatment of Bruce Lee in the film. Now, did you think he got a raw deal?
I mean, not really. He did kind of look like a jerk, but it was good action, and he probably wouldn't have liked that he was talked down to and said that he wouldn't be able to beat, who was it, Chuck Norris?
Well, he was talking about, I think, Muhammad Ali, but before he had changed his name, so it was like Cassius Clay.
Right, yeah. And so I don't think that they would have liked that, and I don't think that they would have liked that he did end up getting his butt kicked, even though he said he didn't.
Right. Well, in terms of the actual butt kicking, it was kind of a fair play because they set it up. It's like Brad Pitt's character, the stuntman Cliff Booth, is going to get in a fight on the lot with Bruce Lee, and they set the terms of the engagement, which is best 2 out of 3 falls, no aiming for the face, and Bruce Lee gets the first fall. He knocks him down. He knocks Brad Pitt down, and then Brad Pitt gets up, gets him on the second fall, and they're interrupted before the third fall. So we don't know, how it would have turned out. So you can still say, oh, Bruce Lee, he knows after the second fall what he's got to do, so he could beat him. But there's that. I don't think, but I'm not related to Bruce Lee. I don't have a super strong emotional attachment. Quentin Tarantino's defense was that Brad Pitt, as Cliff Booth, that character is a Green Beret. So he would have the training. He would know what to do. Not just any stuntman.
I didn't really take that away from that movie.
That he was a Green Beret?
No. Was there ever any reference to that?
Oh, no, there's not a direct reference. They just say he's a war veteran.
Okay.
And you kind of have to assume it's the Korean War because even at that point, 69, like World War II would be, seems like that'd be...
Yeah, he'd be a lot older.
Yeah, but it was just outside the movies. But there is so much stuff like they made for the movie. Another example of that, not entirely in the movie, they have a Mad magazine parody.
Yes.
And they made an entire actual Mad magazine. So as if they were producing a real issue of Mad, and it may have been, I think, the last issue of Mad magazine.
And I kind of feel like even if Quentin Tarantino somehow wasn't able to release this movie, he would have been happy anyways because he got that Mad magazine.
He got his Mad magazine movie parody. Although they probably did like a Pulp Fiction parody and a Kill Bill parody back in the day.
Yeah.
You'd have to imagine.
Well, he actually got to write the title for it, right? So this one he had a lot more input on, and I think this is his feather in his cap.
Yeah. I'll say again on my art here, if it doesn't look completely realistic, movie accurate, that's my defense. I'm doing my Mad magazine parody of these characters. But I was just doing quick pencil sketches today and trying to get likenesses down for the 3 main protagonists, which is Leo as Rick Dalton, and then next up, Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, and the final one, Brad Pitt, playing Cliff Booth. Now, of those 3, I have a clear favorite. I loved Brad Pitt in this movie.
Me too.
One big exception. I don't think you should kill your wife. And I think it was pretty clear that he had killed his wife.
Well, I'm happy you say that. For many reasons.
So that's kind of a character flaw as far as I see it. But everything else about him is great. He's great with his dog. He turns down inappropriately young women. Mm-hmm. He's a man's man. He knows how to have a good time.
And when he went to the movie lot that he had filmed on, and he sees that the Manson family is living there, he knows that somebody was living there before, and he checks on him, even though it's obvious once he does get to see him that they weren't that good of friends. Mm-hmm. But he still felt compelled to make sure that this old man was okay and not being taken advantage of.
Yeah, that was at Spawn's Movie Ranch, I think is what it was. And that's where the Manson family was living. And it's like, again, he's a good role model, because if I was in that situation, I would have left almost immediately. Be like, well, I'm sure he's okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I would have guessed he was dead. I thought, like, up to the point where he sees old man Spawn, I would have thought, oh, he's just, it's like a rotting corpse.
That's what I thought. Even when, like, he had to push him, I thought for sure there was going to be, like, maggots or flies or something. Because the house wasn't kept up very well anyways, so. Ugh.
He also, in that scene, he punches out one of the hippies, which would not be my answer to anything, but the fact that he was able to get that guy to change his tire for him.
Oh, I would have been able to do that.
Oh, you could do that. I think you could do it just with charm, though. You don't have to pull out the guns or anything.
Yeah, probably not.
So, I guess my big pet peeve, or like the thumbs down in terms of the movie for me, is just the feet.
Oh.
Like, it was too much feet for me, and it really it reeks of feet. No, it reeks of, like, this is Tarantino's fetish, and it's a little much for me.
There was another one where they were, like, driving down the hill, and it was like you could see Margot Robbie's hair flowing and, like, flying around, and I just knew that was one of those things that he was like, this is great, get more fans on her so that you can see more movement. And, like, there were just some really great shots that nobody else would have done.
Yeah, but speaking also of, leaving things in that you probably could leave on the cutting room floor, we know there's way more.
Oh, yeah. There's
easily, like with The Hateful Eight, it ended up being, he expanded it to a mini-series that was then put on Netflix. And with this, I can imagine something similar happening in the near future when it ends up on a streaming service.
Right.
Or maybe even 4K UHD. But, like in the credits, for example, it's like featuring the gang, Tim Roth, cut. So it's like we know there's scenes with Tim Roth, and the speculation I read was that Tim Roth played a bit part on the old Bounty Law TV show that Leo's character was on, and he might have played like the sheriff.
Oh.
Because you remember that bit where the guy's like, I'll introduce you to the sheriff when he comes back into town.
Right.
So I imagine that might have been Tim Roth. But whatever's left, whatever's out, I want to see.
What's the actor's name again that plays the girl's father?
Was it Bruce Dern? Which girl?
The little girl, she's sitting on Leo's lap, and he, like, pushes her to the ground.
I don't know that anyone was her... Do you mean, like, the actor
playing
the father?
Played the father that was, like, in there trying to negotiate getting her
Was it the 90210 actor?
Yes.
Okay, so that was... I always get him confused, because every time I think Jason Priestley, I can't remember the other one.
Oh, Luke Perry.
There you go. So it's Luke Perry.
Yes.
And this was his final screen appearance too, right? Because sadly he passed away before he could do, because they're doing the 90210 reboot.
Yeah, I think that they're probably just doing that for him because he had wanted to do that forever. But yeah, it was great to see him on the screen again. It's sad that we won't ever again.
Yeah.
And, all of the actors talk so highly about working with him.
Yeah. Another thing that I'll say, like in terms of trivia, just my last bit for talking about Sharon Tate, is that she goes at one point to pick up a book, and she's picking up Tess of the Dubervilles, because she wanted to show it in real life. She wanted to show it to Roman Polanski and get him to make a movie out of it where she would play Tess. And Roman Polanski did, a decade after that, end up making the movie, starring Natalia Kinski. I'm getting that way wrong, but that was a movie I saw on Blu-ray years and years after the fact, but it's a great film. Too bad she could not have been in it.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much as we could possibly say about this film, don't you think?
Go see it.
Go see it.
Go see it. Great movie.
Go see it 3 times. You want to go see it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go see it again. I say best film of the decade.
I'd say so far you're right.
So far. So from 2010 on, easily the best film. I think if we back it up another 10 years and we say best film of the millennium, there might be more competition there because I'm a big fan of Mulholland Drive as well as Speed Racer. But I think those are the only two competitors, honestly. And, well, one more piece of trivia. Speed Racer also had Emile Hirsch. So as far as I'm concerned, he's been in 2 of the top films of this millennium.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, great job, Emile. So, if you like the review and you like this video, honey, what can I do?
Be sure to click that like button and then let us know in the comments below why you like it. And be sure to subscribe so that you can get updates whenever we have new content available.
Yeah, and these are mostly art videos that we talk over with commentary. So, if you do art yourself, I encourage everyone to draw every day. The only way you're going to get better is to keep drawing. So, until next time, keep drawing.